How's it going, Rangers and overall hockey fans? Thank you guys so much for chiming into Rangers Review, episode 49, wherever you get your podcasts, or if you're watching live as well on YouTube or watching replay. Really appreciate everyone's support here. Myself, Wardy, you guys probably know me from Wardy NYM, alongside good friend Statboy Steven. That is the guru of all things New York Rangers on Twitter, the best follow out there. And we have a lot to break down today on the past three games for the Rangers that unfortunately didn't fare nearly as well as what I was hoping for, as what all of us were hoping for, but definitely positives and negatives to take away from these past three games. So we'll be giving our quick analysis and breakdown on recapping them. Then we'll also be getting into the upcoming schedule for the Rangers. Should be a shorter pod than what it was a couple days ago. I'm not feeling as rusty as we were coming back from the All-Star break, just like the team, but playing a deep dive. Looking forward to it as always. And Steven, how are you doing today, my friend?
Good. Yeah, I hope our episode tonight will be a little bit more structured than last week.
Just a little bit.
A little bit. We were running around like crazy people last week, but it was our first recording in 3 weeks. We had a lot to catch up on. So, yeah. But can I start by saying, you got nothing, sir?
I know. You don't need to remind me. Yes.
So when you win.
Yes, exactly. I'm allowed to drill down your throat how happy I am. You can't do it vice versa. That's not how this works.
So when you win, I have to sit through all this, but when I win, I should just shut up.
Yes. See how easy it was to realize that, Steven?
It's like my marriage all over again.
Yeah, for guys that don't know, if this is your first time listening to the pod, what we do, and I always recap this, but because we get new viewers, is that towards the end of every episode, when we look at the upcoming schedule, say the next 2-3 games before we discuss again, we share our predictions. If I say, the Rangers going to win this May game, Steven says that. Then if neither of us get the record correct, then we go into, okay, how to break the ties by having a certain amount of goals the Rangers score. Now, I picked the Rangers to go 3-0 over the past 3 games. They went 1-2-0. And I also picked the Rangers to score at least 9 goals. So I didn't win by any stretch. So the the imaginable championship belt is still with Steven for a second week. Not too happy about that. We got to get my bearings straight and hopefully get a good prediction in by time this episode is done.
Fine. You're doing fine with your predictions.
Oh, I know, yeah. And I knew it was ballsy, 3-0, especially with a stretch where I will say one of the games I was most concerned with, obviously, wasn't the one that ended up being the problem. But these were games where, especially when you looked at the competition, the Rangers definitely should have. I think they fared pretty well at times. I thought there were some times, where things weren't in their favor, especially that we'll be getting into here shortly. But all in all, I will say that this was, even though, yes, you had 2 losses to 1 win, it wasn't as bad as I think what it would look like just on the forefront when you're looking at the paper. But yeah, we're going to get into these games now. Steven, I'll take away with game 1 of this 51. If you want to take a game 2 then, and then I'll do game 3. And then we'll, of course, share our thoughts like we normally do. But yeah, Steven, again, kudos to you on the championship win. You can drill down my throat all you want. I'm just busting your balls here. But let's get into this one because the Rangers are now 3rd in the Metro. They're 33-15-5, 71 points on the season in 53 games played. Their past 3 games going into this stretch start off against the Capitals. And that was a game where I naturally had PTSD because the last time the Rangers played the Capitals, that was the only game I've been to physically in attendance this year. Went all the way to DC, which is not necessarily close by me, to see them get blown out. I think it was 5-0, 5-1 was the final. It was not a fun game to attend. So there was a lot going into this one, and you could see right from the jump, as soon as the puck dropped, the Rangers just had the upper hand in a lot of ways. They had a great pace to start this one and just really strong play all around against the Capitals team that's chomping at the bit to try to get back in the top 3 in the Metro. But it starts things off here in the first period thanks to a Mika Zibanejad goal, which was a beauty set up by, yes, Alexis Lafreniere, which is a big topic of discussion today. A beautiful draw pass along that right side, and then Zibanejad just rips one right away for a nice goal to give the Rangers the early 1-0 lead here. And then when we go further into this one, going to the second period now, this is where Alexis Lafreniere continues to shine, right? We get into the second period, and he gets himself a nice tip-in goal. That would be his 11th of the season. And I'm just trying to pull up the assist right now because I didn't have the schedule put up here. So bear with me just 1 second because it's showing me March when I know this game was still in February. But yeah, Lafreniere got a nice tip in, and this was just the start of him having a very good 3-game stretch here, and really has been thriving with more minutes, even though he hasn't been getting points every game, obviously, was taking advantage of the opportunities given to him. And I think we saw more of a Lafreniere than we've seen, especially in large parts of this season. But 11th goal of the season, assisted by Lindgren, who got the shot off from the point with his 6th apple of the year. And Zibanejad's goal also was his 20th, assisted by, of course, Lafreniere and Jones. But then we get into the third period in this one, and Chris Kreider does what Chris Kreider does. He scores pretty close in front of the net, gets himself a nice kind of wraparound thing going on with the goaltender. He gets his 34th of the year to make it a 3-0 lead for the Rangers in the third period, over halfway through in this one. And this is a less than halfway through, I should say, assisted by Fox for his 42nd apple of the year. And Zibanejad was 33rd assist. So Zibanejad had a multi-point game in this one, as did Alexis Lafreniere. And then add insult to injury, the Rangers get a 2-on-1 down halfway through in the third period, and Barclay Goodrow gets a beautiful goal that was set up perfectly by, yes, Kevin Rooney. Goodrow's 11th of the year, assisted by Rooney's 5th apple, and Reeves' 8th assist. And then right when you thought that Igor Shesterkin was destined to have a beautiful shutout, the one man that is always going to score a goal, no matter how it happens, he's just going to do it, Alexander Ovechkin. He scores his 32nd of the year right in front with just a minute left, assisted by Kuznetsov. I was so pissed off when that happened. Igor deserved this shutout more than life itself. He played on absolutely phenomenal, like he usually does, a stellar performance, but no less. Igor kept everything afloat, and the Rangers thankfully got the goals when it mattered most, because they got outshot in this one 37-21. They got dominated in the faceoff dot 63-37. Power plays, neither team scored. Hits wise favored the Rangers 24-17. Blocks tied 10-10 apiece, and giveaways right around the same at 8 and 9 apiece, respectively. But yeah, what really stood out in this one was Igor Shesterkin having 36 saves on 37 shots. Should have had that shutout. That was a frustrating way to end it, of course, in the final minute of all things. And this would be the first of all 3 games that we would see without Patrick Nemeth, because he's been dealing with injury day to day, but also Philip Hedl, who's healthy, who's been out as a healthy scratch, in which guys like Greg McKegg have been getting playing time, and also Morgan Barron that we'll be getting into. So, Steven, what was your recap on this game? I thought that this was easily one of the better games for the Rangers this season. I know the Caps got a lot of shots off, but it was really a matter of selective shooting in this one. And this is where I really felt that the Rangers took best advantage of the opportunities given them, especially against a goaltender like Samsonov, who's not terrible by any means, but their other goaltender, Vanacek, is the one that's really had the Rangers' number since he hit the NHL with the Caps.
Yeah, I think for the Rangers, what really stood out this game was that all 4 goals came at even strength, which is something that was desperately needed, especially when you consider how few power plays the Rangers have been getting in the 3 games preceding that since the All-Star break. So seeing them score at even strength 4 times is definitely a big positive, but you can also tell how much this team relies on Igor Shesterkin.
Yeah.
Now finally we start to see people we start to see NHL reporters having the conversation about Igor Shesterkin for the Hart Trophy. The Vezina is a lock. There's no way anyone else other than Shesterkin wins the Vezina this season. But he's in the conversation for the Hart Trophy. His numbers are better than Carey Price in 2015 when he won the Hart Trophy. But yeah, the Rangers win this game against the Capitals. First game against the Capitals since opening night. So it was difficult to really get a feel for what to expect. But yeah, solid win for the Rangers against a division rival, which is a good thing. And then, yeah, unfortunately, they go into another game against a division rival when they had not played this season yet.
Before we get there, Steven, I just have to cut you off quickly, because if you're watching the live stream right now, we do have a donation, a generous one from Davis, who's been a great supporter on the channel. Thank you so much for that, Davis. Really appreciate that $20 donation. Says, went to the Caps game. I remember you saying last episode that you were going. Awesome. The Reeves effect was in full bloom as Wilson seemed invisible the entire game. It was a non-factor. Great one for them. Great job as always. Thank you so much. And you couldn't have said it better. Yes, Tom Wilson was a non-factor, and that was all in a hand with Revo. It's funny how the Rangers go out of their way to land Reeves, especially for the Tom Wilson aspect. And Wilson wants nothing to do with him, and Reeves is smart. He's not going to just take a
Yeah.
stupid penalty for the sake of taking one. He's only going to do it if it obviously benefits the team, if a fight is warranted. Because we did see a scuffle in this one, but it wasn't between Reeves and Wilson. I'm trying. Who was it? It was who was it between? I'm forgetting.
Lindgren and Sherry, I think.
Yeah, Lindgren and Shearer, which didn't last long. They were just hacking at each other
Yeah.
right towards the end of the game.
No, but Reeves is having an impact on this team without dropping the gloves. And
Yes.
that fourth goal against the Capitals by Goudreau with the assist by Rooney, which makes Rooney a better passer than Panarin, because as you remember, Goudreau had several 2-1 breakaways with Panarin the last couple of weeks, and neither of those resulted in a goal. But Rooney, beautiful pass. But that all started with Reeves out-muscling Wilson right after the face-off in our own zone.
Yeah.
So yeah, that Reeves is having a great impact on this team. But yeah, good win. There's nothing more you can ask from this team to go out there and beat the Capitals 4-1. We are still in a tight playoff race, not so much to make the playoffs, because I think we're solid. We're in a solid position to make it. I don't think we're going to miss the playoffs at all. It's all about seeding now. You know, you're going to finish second or third in the division, which whether or not you finish second, it matters, because you get home ice advantage if you finish in second place. So the win against the Capitals and getting that in regulation was definitely a good one. On the flip side, the next game against the Penguins goes the exact opposite way. And yeah, looking into that game, you know, you go into Pittsburgh where the Rangers just aren't really that comfortable the last couple of years, or actually the last 10, 15 years. The Rangers have always struggled, in my opinion, or from my memory, when they play in Pittsburgh.
Only when it's playoff hockey do I think it's a bit of an X factor.
Well, when they play the Penguins at home, they are usually doing well, but it's those games in Pittsburgh where something happens. And you know, I'm not one to complain about referees or about the decisions the referees are making.
Yeah, you're quite the opposite usually.
But in this game, there was a blatant mistake by the referees, a hook and call on Lindgren that
absolute joke.
Directly resulted into a power play goal by Evgeny Malkin, which was the only game only goal of the game. That was a terrible call. I've had my issues with how referees call cross checks, and there was something happening in this game. I'm not going to go into that because that is something systemic in the league. That's not going to change. But that call on Lindgren made no sense to me, and unfortunately, that leads to the only goal against. Igor Shesterkin put up a .964 save percentage and still doesn't get the team to even to overtime. And you know, this will go into the next game that you're recapping against the Canucks, but I don't want to complain too much about the referees when your offense cannot score a goal in 5 periods of hockey.
That's fair. And
when you get shut out by Tristan Jarry and Thatcher Demko for 5 periods of hockey, you have bigger problems than the referees giving away a power play. That said, that power play was crucial because like Malkin scored the only goal of the game. But yeah, it was unfortunate. The first game against the Penguins, you really hope to get something out of it because the Penguins are the other team the Rangers are in a fierce battle with for that second spot in the Metropolitan Division. So losing a division game in regulation is the worst thing that could possibly happen. You want to get at least a point. If you're going to lose, get it at least to overtime. But unfortunately, they were unable to. And the Rangers had some opportunities, you know, that they had
plenty of opportunities.
They started, in my opinion, really well. Those first 2 minutes when Evan Rodriguez was called on for the hold and the Rangers go on the power play after a minute 50, I remember saying to friends, I really like what I'm seeing from the Rangers. We have a really good start for once. You know, we have a good start to the game. We're coming off a 4-1 win against a division rival. And then we go into Pittsburgh and we have a really strong start. Those first 2 minutes were great. And they extended it with the power play. But after the first 10 minutes of the game, they slid back into that purgatory of not being able to create anything. And it was so frustrating. We did get shots on net, don't get me wrong, but the quality of the shots just wasn't there. We got 27 shots. Jari saved all 27, and aside from maybe one or two, they were really game-breaking saves. Not the saves that we see from Shesterkin on a nightly basis. And Shesterkin made 25 shots on 26 or 25 saves on 26 shots. And most of his saves were much more noticeable because of how the Penguins were able to cut through our defense. So the fact that we lost this game by 1 goal is a miracle. And also, I'll get into that in a second. Chris Kreider, how that man has not scored another goal in the last 2 games is unbelievable.
Oh my God.
14 shots on goal in the last 2 games combined against the Penguins and the Canucks. But without giving it away, I'm pretty sure people know that Kreider didn't get any points in those 2 games. I looked it up. Only 14 other players in Rangers history had back-to-back games with at least 6 shots on goal and finishing those 2 games with 0 points. This was the first time since March 2013 that it happened to a player to have this in back-to-back games.
And who was that player? Do you know?
Ryan Callahan.
Oh, Captain Cali.
Ryan Callahan, Rick Nash, Chris Higgins, Brendan Dubinsky, and after Dubinsky, you have to go back all the way to 1999 to Theo Fleury. So he's only the 5th player this century to have back-to-back games with 6 shots on goal without ending up with a point. It's unbelievable. It's so unlucky. He's so unlucky, and especially the Canucks game that you will dive into in a second. He had some great opportunities there, and I'm baffled that none of those went in.
Those past 2 games, he was high flying. It wasn't for a lack of effort on Kreider's part and just showing his dominance, even though that, yes, he's not scoring a goal, per game pace right now. He's still having endless opportunities that he himself is creating. It's more so than him just throwing himself right in front and hoping that he's going to get a tip in. It's far more than that. But to circle back for a second, just on this game quick, it was basically even right down the line. Shots 27-26. Face-offs, the Rangers actually won, which is great after getting manhandled against the Caps, 54-46 here. Power play was an X factor again with that Malkin one-timer on the right dot, and then which was poor defense, might I add, too. The fact that they let Malkin get open like that on the right side. Penalty minutes, even the same. Hits favored the Rangers 43-39. Big hitting game. Blocks 16-19 favoring the Penguins, and then giveaways favored the Rangers 5-9. So going back to you now, just this game in itself, yes, that they didn't get as much quality as you were hoping for, but yeah, I would agree with you. This felt different in the type of saves that Jari made at times versus even how Demko made. That we'll be getting into.
When we get into the Canucks game, if we compare these 2 goalies, Demko won the Canucks the game.
Yes.
Because without Demko made Shesterkin like saves. Tristan Jari played like Georgiev playing in Toronto,
Yeah.
He makes the saves that he's supposed to make, and the shot quality isn't great, so he ends with a shutout. It's those games happen sometimes. Or no, actually, Georgiev this season at home against the Sharks is probably a better example, where the Sharks were just unable to create decent scoring opportunities. That's the game Jari had, and he gets a shutout. Congratulations to him. But this game was, one to forget. Like the fact that we had 6 full minutes of 4-on-4 hockey, and that not opening the game up tells you all you need to know about this game.
Yeah,
it felt like a playoff game.
It did feel like a playoff game. That's exactly the type of vibe I was getting. It was a grinder, to put it lightly. And now shifting things from Pittsburgh to Vancouver, this is one where there were a lot of things going wrong. And don't get me wrong, do I feel that if Igor Shesterkin was in net, the Rangers would have had a much stronger chance of winning? Yes, I do. That naturally just happens when you have the best goaltender in the world on your team. Georgiev did not play great, but he wasn't at fault for everything either when you look at exactly how those goals were scored. But yeah, Vancouver, that was fresh, went into this one, and JT Miller, the former Ranger that there's been plenty of rumors about, did put on a show. He got some very key assists in this one, very strong performance. And Vancouver overall, just they outplayed the Rangers in a lot of ways. The Rangers looked like a team that was playing on a back-to-back, especially in that second period. But to start things off, in the first period, Tanner Pearson scores in the slot. Not great defense at all. There really wasn't much blocking from him. He got a clear shot off on Georgiev. You could say Georgiev, that should have been a nice save considering he had open lane. He's able to see everything. You can make that argument. It was still a nice shot on Pearson, glove side, and that gave the early lead. That was assisted, of course, by JT Miller. So Tanner Pearson's 10th goal assisted by Miller. Almost had 40 assists at that point. And then staying in the first period, right towards the end, in the final 40 seconds, Tyler Myers scores his first of the season along the left side, gets a nice 1-T. Nice shot. Again, a goal that Georgiev should have saved, in my opinion, assisted by Miller and Highmore. You knew Myers was going to score, not just because, one, he didn't have a goal at all yet this season, but two, he was playing in front of his mother because his brother actually is Quentin Grimes, who is the rookie for the New York Knicks. So it's really interesting.
I saw that pre-game, and that, I had no idea.
Yeah, I didn't know either. Very cool. So obviously, two different fathers, but Grimes, who's like a decade younger than Myers, they're both obviously massive, height-wise. So you can see where the genes are coming from there. But still very, very cool. For Myers, at least, not happy that it was against the Rangers, no less. But Quentin Grimes, obviously, for the Knicks, was very happy to see that live in the Garden. But then we get into the second period for the Rangers, and this, again, is where you start to see endless opportunities by Kreider and especially Kreider, man. He was high flying the amount of times he was charging the net, either, front facing or coming along the right or left side. It just felt like he had endless opportunities, but Demko kept stopping them. Demko looked stellar in this one, and huge hats off to him, because in the second period, the Rangers did get outplayed. Outside of Kreider doing what Kreider does, the Vancouver was the better team, and Rangers really started to fall here in the second. And then you get a tip in by Lamico. Lamico, I'm probably saying his last name wrong. I apologize. His 6th of the year, assisted by Brain Shannon, less than 10 minutes into the second period. That made it a 3-0 game favoring Vancouver. And then another tip in. This was by Matthew Highmore, only his 3rd of the season, assisted by Ekman Larson and Tyler Myers. And that was on the power play, shut off by Ekman Larson on the point. And that was tipped in along the left side by Highmore. So then we get into the third period. And if there's one positive to take away from this game, I honestly say it really is Alexis Lafreniere in a lot of ways. He was
you texted me right after the goal.
I know. And I told you this is what we were looking for, because before we can get there, Alexis Lafreniere should have easily had 2 assists in that first period, but the Rangers simply couldn't bury it. He was setting up people like No Tomorrow, looking fantastic with the playmaking. Then in the third period, what has Steven been preaching for, especially if you listen to our last episode a couple days ago? Steven has been saying it. We've all been in agreement. I don't think anyone can disagree. Alexis Lafreniere, we want to see him score an Alexis Lafreniere type goal. I feel like every single goal he scores is either an open net or, it's a tip in front. It's all in the crease, right? You haven't seen that snipe show from him yet. Well, what does he do here? He gets a set up, beautiful pass by Mika Zibanejad in the left dot to the right dot, and Lafreniere gets all of it. A beautiful one-timer to get Demko, and that was his 12th goal of the season, assisted by Zibanejad's 34th apple. I would say one of Lafreniere's, if not the best goal he scored in his career, definitely one of them. That was a goal scorer's goal that we're finally seeing. And game by game, you can tell that Lafreniere, with the increased ice time, he's looking more and more confident. For a while,
it's amazing. It's amazing what happens to your first overall pick when you play him with players who actually put up points.
Exactly. And you can see the connection between him and Zibanejad in particular that really have stood out over these past 3 games. They were the stars of the show. But then going into the second goal for the Rangers that they'd score, that was Ryan Strome, assisted by Panarin and Fox. Panarin's 42nd apple and Fox's 43rd. It's Ryan Strome got his 11th goal of the season. A little backhand right in front of the net. So strong goal there by Ryan Strome. But that's all the Rangers could do. Elias Pettersson scores his 17th of the year, who's been streaky this year, but has definitely picked up the pace over these past 15 games for Vancouver. Gets the empty net, and that ends this one. This was a frustrating game, though. Look, I understand the Rangers were on a back-to-back, so it's not all that outlandish to see them sluggish, but defensively in this one too, especially on both tip and goals. You can even make the argument for the Pearson goal, but on, Lamico's and Highmore's goal, poor defense. There's no one on them in front whatsoever, especially Lamico's. That's something that should have been prevented in my mind.
I would say all 4 goals, because that first goal, Tanner Pearson is wide open in the slot. That's a high danger area.
Yeah.
Can you look? if that's Shestyorkin, I expect him to make the save. But it wasn't Shestyorkin in that. It was Georgiev. And the reason Georgiev is a backup is because he's not as good as Shestyorkin. Look, when a player is that open, like with that much space and time in that position, I'm sorry, I cannot blame the goalie for that. The second goal by Myers is probably one that he wants back, but Keandre Miller was nowhere in sight.
No,
Keandre Miller was up front. He missed the tip in, and then he couldn't get back in time. So a defenseman is out of position. Yeah, that's probably the one that he wants back. Goals 3 and 4 is a deflection right in front of him. No one should ever blame the goalie for that. And then the fifth goal was an empty net goal. I'm not going to say Georgiev played great, but I wouldn't blame the loss on him. And this, I circle back to what I said earlier. I cannot complain about a backup goalie or about the officiating when our offense struggles to score for 5 out of 6 periods. That's just unacceptable. And it highlights the bigger issue this team has. And I was really hoping they were going to build on that Capitals game where they scored four goals at even strength. But that third line just does not produce. We have Dryden Hunt on the second line, who is 11th among forwards on this team in points. And he's on the second line. This team has so many holes, and I don't think you can fix all of that at the deadline. Look, something needs to change with this team for them to be more consistent. But let's just enjoy the ride and see where it ends. Let's hope they can recover from this. They're playing the Blues tomorrow. And then I think the Devils and Jets.
Yes. Yeah.
Friday
We'll be getting into that.
Yeah. So they have 3 games. Well, the Blues are a tough opponent, but the games against the Devils and the Jets that are coming up, they should be able to rebound there. You know, those are games where you are the superior team. So those are the games that you should win. Although the Devils actually beat the Canucks, I think 6-1 last night.
Yes, they did.
The Canucks on their second of a back-to-back get completely outplayed and outscored.
And the Devils have been playing spoiler because they dominated the Penguins before the Rangers played them too.
Yeah. I was kind of upset with that, not because the Devils won 6-1,
but just because you knew the Pens were going to come out really hard in their next
exactly.
one.
I don't care if the Devils win. You know, as long as they don't make the playoffs, I don't care. They can win every game 9-0 as long as they don't make the playoffs. I really do not care. But they gave the Penguins the wake-up call right before they played the Rangers. That annoyed me.
Yeah, I agree with you, and that's how my dad felt as well.
The timing of their win annoyed me, not the win itself. I wish the Penguins back-to-back was reversed, so they would have played us first and then the Devils.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah.
Unfortunately, that didn't happen. But look, the Rangers have a lot of talent up front, but when the top 6 is not producing, no one is.
Yeah. And before we deep dive that further, because I do want to spend a good chunk on just the forward configuration and Filipino, especially with the man being the odd man out lately. The Rangers and the Canucks in that game were basically even 34-33 shots apiece. Rangers lost faceoffs 54-46. Power play, it only took 1 for the Canucks to execute on that tip in by Highmore. Hits favored the Rangers 26-18, blocks favored Canucks 12-10, and giveaways favored the Canucks 2-7. So yeah, this was a game that, again, not all that surprising that the Rangers didn't necessarily have the best legs for in the back-to-back, but still one that you would hope that the Rangers could leg out and have a better performance than what we saw, especially in that second period, is where it felt like, okay, there's very slim chance in my mind that the Rangers are going to come back this one. It was nice to see them bounce back a little bit in the third, but still just wasn't enough to get it done. And to your point, as you said earlier, yes, I have been a critic of Georgiev. I always will be, but he was not at fault for everything here in this game. He was not at fault singly for the loss. This was more so on the defense. You could see it. And this goes not just for, the Keandre Millers of the world. This goes for everyone defensively. Adam Fox, I love Foxy, but I don't think he's been playing his best hockey over these past couple games. Personally, I think that pair with Lindgren needs to be better. And then offensively, the same thing. You need to get more from Panarin, especially. I understand guys getting a little bit of a slow start, after coming back from the All-Star break. It's been a little bit now. I want to see some more consistency with him because it's clear that when the Rangers don't have their top guys rolling, they have nothing going for them. So to your point, again, what are they going to do offensively now, right? I think it's a good time now to shift into Heedle's future because Gallant, as we know, has been favoring the McKeggs of the world and the Barons of the world over giving Heedle ice time over these past 3 games, being a healthy scratch. So my question to you, Steven, what has your takeaway been seeing Heedle out of the lineup, seeing how the Rangers have played? Do you think that Heedle still should be in this lineup for the bottom 6? Do you think that he is still a better fit than McKegg or even Barron to a certain extent? And do you think that Heedle's future with the Rangers is coming to a quick end, knowing how he has been treated at least over these 3 games now, or if the Rangers are still going to try to work things out with him for the remainder of the year heading into the offseason?
Yeah, let's start off by saying that I'm happy that Morgan Barron is getting some game time.
Agreed.
That guy had been, like I said last time, that guy's been in the press box so long, he started to decorate the walls.
Yeah, he made it nice and cozy at home.
He made it nice and cozy for himself. Yeah. So for him to get some game time, perfect, great. I was waiting for that. Heedle, would I play Heedle over some of the other forwards in the lineup? Absolutely. I would play Heedle over Dryden Hunt. I would play Heedle over Greg McKegg. That's a no-brainer. I would probably play Heedle over Julien Gauthier. But Heedle Gauthier for me is a toss-up. You can go either way. I mean, it doesn't upset me that Gauthier plays over Heedle. It annoys me that Hunt and McKegg are in the lineup. Hunt and McKegg are not NHL players. I'm sorry.
They are.
On a contender, they should not be on the team. If you are a bottom feeder, then you can have them on your team. But on a contender, if you want to really be a contender, if you want to be a playoff team, those players should be nowhere near your lineup. With Heedle, I don't know. My biggest concern with Heedle, and I brought this up in the past too, the past couple of weeks, he reminds me a lot of Michael Del Zotto in the fact that, in my opinion, he's no longer developing. He actually is regressing. When the Rangers had Del Zotto, he had a really strong rookie year. He had a really solid second year. And after that, it just got worse and worse. And they traded him for Kevin Kline, and that was the right move to make at the time. I feel the same way about Philip Heedle. Philip Heedle showed a lot of promise early on. Had some really strong games, but he's very streaky. When he's not on his game, he's a liability. And it's getting to the point where his hot streaks are no longer enough to make up for the cold streaks. I still think he has value in a trade. It's probably going to be a 1-for-1 trade where you trade him for a guy that it might be disgruntled in his organization, who might be struggling and also needs a change of scenery. I did see someone suggest Comtois of the Ducks.
Maxime Comtois.
I think Heedle for Comtois is an interesting proposal. I think it can work for both teams. Comtois feels like a very much like a Chris Drury pick. I mean, if Chris Drury had a draft pick in the draft where Comtois was selected, that's the type of player I expect him to go after. So it's not an unreasonable proposal.
So Comtois, I'm looking him up because I haven't been following him this season.
Okay.
Only has 6 points in 31 games this year.
Mm-hmm.
Last season, in the shortened season, he broke out. He had 33 points in 55 games, 16 goals, 17 assists. So what happened? I don't know the situation in Anaheim. So if there's any Ducks fans that potentially come across this on YouTube, at least, let me know in the comments what has been the issue with him. But yeah, that's an interesting one. He's a left winger, so it's not like the Rangers would be getting a center in return, but maybe that's best for them too. Who knows?
Yeah, but look, the fact that Heedle is a healthy scratch for 2 games in a row, with the trade
3 games in a row,
or 3 games in a row.
Yeah,
with the trade deadline only being 3 weeks away, that does fuel the speculation, of course, because normally players become a healthy scratch this time of year when they're getting traded.
Yeah, and they want to make sure they don't get hurt. Just obvious stuff.
They don't want to risk injury because then you ruin a trade. But 3 games in a row as a healthy scratch is a bit much, I think. Um, I also think that he should have played after the shutout against the Penguins. If you get shut out and you don't make any changes to your lineup, as a coach, I don't think that sends the right message.
Especially on a back-to-back too, though. It
And
just
on,
it gives further
yeah,
reasoning.
aside from the fact that it's a back-to-back where you also travel, it's not like you played both games at home. So it's a back-to-back with travel where you get shut out in the first game of your back-to-back. You can make changes to your lineup. Then it's fine. You can call someone up, try something new, or if you want to still play the same 18 skaters, mix it up a bit. The next game, maybe try a different combination. Maybe put someone else on Panarin's line other than Dryden Hunt, who, from my memory, hasn't scored in 2 months.
Yeah, Hunt is just one of those guys where I'm still scratching my head as to why has Gallant been favored. It's so bizarre to me, and this doesn't just go with Gallant. It feels like no matter what coach the Rangers have, there's always that one guy that has no right to be there.
It's not a Gallant issue. It's not a Gallant issue. It's just
a
coaching issue.
It is an NHL coaching issue. And is Hunt doing his best Howden impression where he's just winning every practice, which is justifying him to not just stay in the lineup, but be in the top 6, possibly. But to your point, too, how you were saying how you would prefer even Hedl over him, I agree. I mean, I know that right wing isn't Hedl's natural position, but I don't see how Hedl can't potentially benefit that second line more than what Hunt has to this point. And I know that by doing that, you sacrifice your bottom 6 depth. So I understand if that's a thought process behind why you don't want to do that much. We saw Hedl there earlier this year, and he looked good. I think Hedl's a winner. He doesn't drive the offense.
Bottom 6 depth, our third line cannot score a goal.
I know.
So what are you sacrificing? You're not sacrificing anything because our third line is not doing anything. If I could make 3 changes to this team, it would be the three guys on the third line. Because that third line is just non-existent.
And the thing is that the fourth line, for the most part, has been okay. Like, the fourth line really has been much of an issue for the Rangers this season.
The fourth line is producing more than the third line. That's an issue.
Yeah, that's the red flag. And it's funny that we're saying this because going into the season, I don't know if you recall this, my thing was, and I've always preached this, is I love even balance with lines, especially where the Rangers could have a competent fourth line. So I was like, okay, this is great. The Rangers are finally going to be a deeper team, but they still have the same struggles like they have in previous years, just not with the fourth line this time, but with the third line to a stronger extent.
Yeah, well, look, you trade away your top line winger. Now, we're not going to go into that in detail, but just to summarize, you trade away your top line winger. You then have you have a disagreement with the disgruntled winger who plays the same position, who goes back to Russia. And then on top of that, you have Sammy Blais, who gets injured in November. He's out for the rest of the season. And a couple of weeks ago, Kakko is out. He has, I think he had wrist surgery because his hand is in a cast. Look, I'm not saying that I'm not saying that the Rangers haven't been unlucky when it comes to their situation, but there are still better options than Dryden Hunt to play in the top 6. I'm not a fan of Barclay Goodrow in the top 6, but I'd play him in the top 6 over Dryden Hunt any day.
Oh, now, yeah, of course.
You can make the case that taking Goodrow out of your bottom 6 weakens your bottom 6. That I can agree with.
Yeah.
But Hedl on the third line does nothing. He does nothing to help this team win games on the third line. That third line of Lafreniere, Hedl, Gauthier was fun on paper because it's such a young team, and no, it was nowhere near the third line that you need if you're a playoff team. And I always go back to the 2013-14 season where you have Puglia, Brassard, Zuccarello, which is the most exceptional third line I've seen for the Rangers in my lifetime.
Easily top 6 line for most clubs.
Yeah. The problem is that we had 2 second lines ahead of them, or you could say we had 3 second lines that season.
Yeah.
all those lines would be a competent second line. But this year's third line is just not doing anything. It's not doing anything. And then on top of that, you have Greg McKegg. What is Greg McKegg doing on an NHL team? I'm sorry.
I don't know.
Nothing against Greg McKegg, but Greg McKegg should be in Hartford.
So should Hunt.
We played a game in San Jose where we had Anthony Greco and Johnny Brodzinski and Tim Gettinger in the lineup. And they all outplayed Greg McKegg. Greg McKegg was the worst player on the team, even though that team had 3 AHL players in the lineup.
You're not wrong.
It's unbelievable. And yeah, it's not a Gallant issue. And, I refer to some of his decisions as David Quinn behavior, because we've gotten used to David Quinn was a master at making wrong decisions. But coaches do this all the time. Alain Vigneault with Tanner Glass. They work together in Vancouver.
Don't get me started with Tanner Glass. I know he's still in the Rangers organization.
Yeah,
I despise that man, player-wise.
They worked together in Vancouver, and then they signed him in New York. So Tanner Glass was a familiar face for Alain Vigneault. And the same thing is true for Greg McKegg. Greg McKegg worked with Gallant in Florida, so they have a history.
Yep.
And this is just human nature. When you are unsure what to do, you count on the people you know. But there are other baffling decisions. Like when the Rangers pulled their goalie against the Canucks, they have a 6-on-5 situation on the ice. How are Ryan Reeves and who was the other one? Was it Goudreau or Hunt? I think it was Reeves and Hunt were out there on the 6-on-5. How? That does not make any sense. I'm sorry. I rather play 3 defensemen on the 6-on-5 than have Reeves and Hunt out there. I rather go with Fox, Trouba, and Miller to add to if you have Panarin, Zibanejad, and Kreider up front. I rather go with a 3-and-3 split if those are your other options at forward. It didn't make sense to me at all. But this team just played 2 bad games following a 4-1 win against a division rival, and that's the most frustrating thing about this week. We come back from the All-Star break. We have a slow start against the Boston Bruins. We win that game in a shootout. Great. Then we go up against the Red Wings. We lose that game in a shootout. It's unfortunate, but it's not a division rival. It's not the worst thing. You still get a point. We beat the Senators, and then we go out against our one of our division rivals and beat them 4-1. And you predicted them to go 3-0. And I don't blame you. Coming off those 4 games, you could see that they were getting better. They were improving. So your expectation is, okay, here we go. We're getting on that train again, and we're gonna play the Penguins now. It's gonna be the first game of the season. We're gonna get some power plays. We're gonna convert on those power plays. Great. And then after that, we play Vancouver. Yeah, it's a decent team, but we're better. And then just absolute dog shit against the Canucks. Terrible against the Penguins. It's just those first 5 periods of those 2 games combined. If you want to rewatch those games, just skip it.
Yeah.
Just watch the 3rd period against the Canucks. That's all you need to see. It's frustrating. And this is a team that I'm afraid that this will fuel Drury even more to make moves at the deadline. And that scares me.
Now, I'm glad you brought up Drury because we're getting close to the deadline, less than a month away now. And as you said, and as we've all seen, if you're just following every day, they've had clear holes in their lineup all year. And you and I have both been under the same agreement that we're fine if the Rangers make moves. We just don't want them to make moves that insinuate that you're going all in by giving up your future right now based on where this team is. You and I have been under the stance that we feel they're not there. Once Alexi Lafreniere, which is great. I'm so happy that Laffy is thriving and we're actually seeing more and more the potential of why he was drafted first overall. And let's not forget that he has an unbelievably bright future. No one should be writing him off as a bust or anything like that yet, just because he didn't come out guns a-blazing. I think that's a joke. But it's great to see him doing well. Kako, what is his impact going to be? Because we have to remember that he should be back with the Rangers within a month, hopefully. So what kind of impact is he going to have? Because I do think he's going to benefit the team right away, but how rusty is he going to be? So those guys, when they're full in the swing of things and thriving, getting, upwards closer to their primes, that's where we feel the Rangers will be at their best. They're not there. They're not there right now, right? So deal-wise, talking about depth, that is what the Rangers should prioritize, in my opinion, at least. I think that they just need to really prioritize well-rounded depth that's going to make this team better now without giving up, of course, the future, without giving up, your top picks and giving up your top prospects. There isn't a need to go all in to that extent when naturally, if you just get that third line solidified, that is going to make a world of difference. Because outside of that, how much more do you think the Rangers should do? Defensively, could you make the argument that maybe they should go after someone? You can make the argument, but at the same time, it's like that's a detriment then to the Rangers' future with Niels Lundqvist or, of course, Zach Jones, or even to a lesser extent, because he's been doing well, Braden Schneider. So do the Rangers want to block guys this early? I think that's a bad move personally. I want to see them continue to develop. But third line wise, that's why we talked about, the Arturi Lekkonens of the world. That makes sense. I think that's like exactly the type of thing that should happen if they're going to be making moves depth wise. Center wise, I think is a really interesting thing because when I think about the Rangers and their center depth, Morgan Barron, I think, has very much strong potential to be, at his peak, a very strong third line center for the Rangers. But he's not there right now. And he's not going to get the opportunities yet. So guys that come to my mind, it makes me think of exactly how the Florida Panthers executed perfectly on a man that was bottom feeder minutes with the Flames after starting off his career hot, that being in Sam Bennett. I hope for the Rangers' sake, if they're going to be smart about adding a center, that they should try to go down a Sam Bennett route. Someone that's going to be RFA, this upcoming offseason and really has maybe been underwhelming with this current club, but it could go directly to him with just need a change of scenery and has potential. I hope the Rangers go down a route like that and that they don't, of course, go all in. Like even a Phil Kessel that we talked about last week, if you're giving up, at most a third round pick for him, pick wise, I don't see how that's a bad thing. That automatically gives you depth. Now, defensively, that doesn't help you. I will agree. You're not getting defense with Phil Kessel, so you're already are losing some of that. But still, those are the type of moves that I feel are best for this team. It's just to add depth. This is not a team that I believe that should be going all in this year, even though that they've been playing far above expectations to the minds of many. That's just kind of my stance. Now, who exactly would be someone like a Sam Bennett this year? That's a good question. I really don't know. I'll have to deep dive that. If there's people in the live stream watching, if you have guys that come to your mind that's been rumored out there, whatever, let me hear it. I know that the Rangers have been linked to a lot of guys, especially from Anaheim, not Maxime Comtois, but I know the Rangers, at least according to reports, have been connected to Rickard Rakell, who kind of gives me those Shane Doan vibes in the sense that I feel the Rangers have been connected to Rickard Rakell for at least the past 4 seasons. So he's the guy that stuck out. Same thing with Hampus Lindholm, which they're connected to. Those are 2 guys for Anaheim that the Rangers always seem to be connected to year in and year out for at least the past 3-4 years. So, Steven, to kind of pivot to you now, what guys do you think may potentially be that Sam Bennett type or just depth-wise that you think would be better for this club to help make them more well-rounded come playoff time?
Yeah, look, there are names that I've mentioned over the last few months that I think would make our third line better. Warren Fogle of the Edmonton Oilers is one that's really high on my list. I think he would be a great addition to this team. Rasmus Kupari of the LA Kings, who not only fills that need on the third line, but also brings something we desperately lack, which is pace. This team needs players that can enter the zone cleanly. And I feel like a broken record at this stage, but again, it was an issue. After that one game against the Capitals, we were having the same issue again. Who else is out there? The LA Kings are probably the one team that makes the most sense to make a trade with.
I know you're going to say the same thing over and over again.
I'm not going to mention the same names, but our depth on defense and their depth at center it's a match made in heaven. Who else would be out there? maybe there's a trade to be made with Ottawa. Ottawa has a couple of guys that are either UFA or RFA coming up. Chris Tierney.
I was just
Uh,
gonna say Tierney.
Tierney is a guy, if you want to go for a rental, he's not going to cost much. Um, if you could add Tierney and Kessel to your third line, I think that really solidifies your depth going into the postseason without giving up much. You would give up like a third and a fourth round pick. If you want to go for someone who is a little bit higher on the food chain, so to speak, yeah, you could go after a guy like maybe Adam Gaudette, who's a little bit younger than Tierney, who's
I would even
RFA.
say the same guy that I mentioned last week that the Rangers have been linked to is Andrew Copp.
Andrew Cobb of the Winnipeg Jets is a name that I could see, but the names that you usually see online are the sexier names, like the former top players like Mark Scheifele.
Yeah.
I don't think the Rangers are in a position where they should go for a guy like Scheifele. And it has nothing against Scheifele, but the Rangers just don't have the assets or they have the assets, but they're not in a position to give up those assets at the moment. Um, yeah, it's tough, who you're going to go after without giving up the farm.
And it is important to note that the Rangers do have a lot of money that they're working
Yeah,
with at the deadline. But okay, how are you going to utilize that money? If you're going to do it
yeah,
by getting a bunch of guys that maybe are a little expensive, but they are UFAs, I'm okay with it as long as you aren't giving up, the farm and doing that. Just
yeah,
don't do that. That's my point.
and there's other guys too, like Marcus Johansson. Yanni Gourde is a guy that's been linked to the Rangers by fans mostly, but those are guys where you pay a little bit more, which I'm fine with if those players are part of your future. I
Yanni
don't want
Gord
to
would be
give
fantastic, especially
I,
if
I
you
don't
pair
want to
with
give up
Boudreaux.
those assets for JT Miller because JT Miller's not going to be here past 2023.
Yeah.
And anyone who's UFA in 2023, I consider a rental. You get it's like Yandel. You get him for two postseasons. You're gonna have to be really sure you're gonna make some noise in the playoffs, and the Rangers aren't there yet. A guy that I'd be really intrigued with, even though he might not be easy to get, is Josh Norris of the Senators.
Yeah, he won't be. That's a guy where you're going to have to cough up an arm and a leg for.
Yeah,
So,
he's turning. I think he's turning 24 in a couple of months. He's RFA this upcoming summer. But hey, who knows? Who knows? Conversations are always ongoing between general managers. And look, we managed to get Zibanejad for Brassard, which I think would also be the reason why they wouldn't make this trade, because they don't want to, they don't want to make the same mistake twice.
yeah, I think the Senators are in a little bit of a better spot than what they were when that
Yeah.
trade transpired.
But maybe look, when you look at the Columbus Blue Jackets, where the Rangers had some scouts when the Blue Jackets played the Panthers, we know they're not gonna go after players on the Florida Panthers because the Panthers are a contender this year. So who else is on that team that would make
Well, there's
sense for
Max
the Rangers?
Domi that the Rangers have been connected to for a couple
There
years
is
now.
there is Max Domi. The
He's
player that I
he's an
the player
interesting one because he's a
the player
UFA.
I would go after though is not Max Domi.
I,
The player I
from
would
that,
go after is Jack Roslovic.
I was just going to say Roslovic, yeah, especially because you have control. Can Roslovic provide more for you than what Heedle can at the same position?
Yeah, if look, I would give up Heedle and a pick to get Roslovic if that's what it takes. Roslovic is having a good season for them. He's RFA this summer. I don't know. Let me have a quick look at the cap situation for next season. They should have the cap space to sign.
Would they get rid of Roslovic so quick though? Because he's a Columbus native. Like he actually wants to be there. From when he got traded, granted, I don't know what his mindset is right now. I'm not following Columbus on the daily, but he's literally from there. He's like one of those rare players that actually appreciates putting on a
No, of
CBJ
course.
uniform.
But look, he's RFA.
Yep.
It's not like he has a no move clause and he's signed for a couple more years and he can force his general manager to keep him on the team.
Yeah.
But just saying, I'm not saying that he's available. But if I would negotiate with Columbus for one of their players, yeah, of course, Domi makes the most sense because he's a rental. 5.3 million cap hit doesn't hurt the Rangers when they go into the deadline with 32 million in cap space. You can realistically add Kessel and Domi and still have 20 plus million in cap space to add other players. Imagine adding Domi, Kessel, and Lehkonen at the deadline. That's a completely new third line that you're adding for minimal assets.
Yep.
But if I were Drury, the player I would target on the Columbus Blue Jackets would be Jack Roslovic. But look, it's probably not going to happen. I'm just spitballing here, as we all are.
Roslovic does profile as that similarity to a Sam Bennett type in the sense that he's had better years. He had a great shortened season with Columbus last year, 34 points in 48 games. What's happened this year? We'll look at the team around him too. I think that's fair. It has changed a little bit since last year with Columbus, not in a rebuild, but they're in a retool. They're just kind of in that limbo right now with the coaching change and everything. So I'm not against Roslovic. That is exactly the type of profile that I would want the Rangers to target, especially center depth wise. Get someone that has control that you're not going to have to give up even a first round pick for. I don't even think you have to. And yeah, that's exactly. I think that's an upgrade over Hedl. Maybe that gives you willingness to even shift Hedl to the wing, where I feel that he has been more productive throughout his young career. Like those are just type. That is exactly the type player. Him and Andrew Copp. Andrew Copp stands out a lot to me too. Not just based on his contract status, but just based on what he would provide. Those are the exact type of young depth players that I truly hope that the Rangers, if they're going to go after guys, which we know they will, those are the ones that I'm more so in favor of than others.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And like I said, Warren Fogle is almost a personal favorite of mine at this stage.
Yeah.
I think he's exactly what this team needs. And you don't want to go all out with adding players who were here past this season, because we all know that next season you're going to get Sammy Blais back from his injury.
Yep.
And Sammy Blais is not a solution for the top six, don't get me wrong, but for your bottom six, that he's going to take up one of those spots. But yeah, it's going to be tough for Chris Drury to make a move where either you don't give up the farm, or if you do, get a player that's going to be part of this team's future. When we traded for Zibanejad in 2016, even if we would have given up more, let's say revisionist history, knowing what we know now, Gordon calls the Senators, and the Senators say, we want Derek Brassard, a first-round pick, and a prospect. You make that trade because it's a long-term investment. That's why I'm so against JT Miller, because JT Miller is not a long-term investment. JT Miller is perfect for a team like the Florida Panthers, the Toronto Maple Leafs. Ironically, the Tampa Bay Lightning could really use him.
Yeah, right. Good point.
The teams that want to go over the top at the deadline, that have no problem giving up a first and a top prospect because they are actually going for it. And I mentioned this also a couple of weeks ago. Look at the Chicago Blackhawks in 2015. They gave up a first-round pick for Antoine Vermette, who was a rental. And it made sense for all teams involved. The Coyotes got a first-rounder. Vermette got his ring. And the Blackhawks got another Stanley Cup. And then in that summer, Vermette signed with the Coyotes again for the exact same cap hit. That's unheard of. I've never seen that before, and probably will never see it. We see it since for the exact same cap hit. But that was a move that was easy to justify to your fans as well, because you already have two cups. Worst case scenario, it backfires. You still have your two cups in the last 4 seasons. The Rangers don't have anything to fall back on. Well, what's Drury gonna say when this whole rebuild collapses because we went all in for 1 year and didn't win a cup? Oh, we got one in '94. No, there's nothing to fall back on. We're not in a position yet to make those moves. Whereas Tampa Bay Lightning, it makes sense. the Carolina Hurricanes are probably the number one team in the league right now.
Yeah. It's always them and the Avs. That's how I felt.
If the Carolina Hurricanes make a move at the deadline where they give up a first and a prospect, their fans should not have any issues with that because they know what they are.
No, they're directly in their prime. The Rangers aren't there yet.
Exactly. The Rangers aren't there yet. So I'm not comfortable making that kind of move. That said, if you want to go for a guy like Lehkonen or maybe go for some depth for some third line rentals that cost you a third round pick or a fourth round pick, I'm all for it. You know, strengthen your core now to maybe try and make it to the second round in the playoffs because that's valuable experience that you're gaining for your young kids, for your veterans. Like, because look at our veteran players. What Panarin, Trouba, Zibanejad, or maybe yeah, they haven't made the playoffs in years. Zibanejad and Kreider haven't played in the postseason since 2017. Shesterkin has one game that he played, and that was the play-in round. So for me, that's not even postseason. You have Fox, you have Lindgren, you have Miller. All these young players need this experience, and this is one of the years where you need to go for that. You know, don't need to go for the cup. You need to go for that, getting experience. I want
the guys that should be the heavy drivers and helping you go for a cup for multiple years on end. This is what it's time to get their feet wet.
Exactly. You know, get your experience in the playoffs. I want the Rangers to play 7 games. If the Rangers play 7 games this postseason, I'm happy because it means they either made it to a game 7 and lost, or they made it to the second round. If they play a gruesome series against the Penguins or the Capitals and they make it to game 7, I'll be happy because that's great experience to have for this team.
Yeah, no, I agree. If they can do a game 7, even if it's just one round, that'd be great. And who knows? Look, Rangers, they may surprise a lot of people this playoffs. They may get cut short, which would suck because again, I just want to see them grind it out. They've proven this year they are willing to play with some of these top dogs. Maybe not to the degree that we would like, but for a team really their first year of being a win now team outside of the rebuild / retool, they've been awfully impressive. Now it's just a matter of, okay, what's going to happen at that deadline and how do they build on that come playoff time?
To illustrate the problem with the Rangers, to put it this way, let's say you give up a first round pick, Braden Schneider, and Brennan Othman to add JT Miller to strengthen your depth, right?
Yeah.
You're one injury away from Dryden Hunt being back in the top 6.
Yeah.
That's my problem.
Agreed. I don't want the Rangers to give away Brendan Othman, especially, and not just because of how stellar of a year he's been having, but he looks like someone that very well could be making an impact on the Rangers slightly sooner than maybe what we would expect.
I also don't think Othman's going to get traded because he was Chris Drury's first ever draft pick.
That's true as well. He's not going to give up on him just this early. No chance.
No,
but
he's going to get every opportunity to show what he can do before they move on from him.
Yes, and rightfully so. If you're a GM and you make your picks, you do the same exact thing. But getting into a couple questions now before we look at the upcoming schedule to wrap things up. Thomas, a great friend and supporter on the channel, says, "Would you be opposed to trading for JT Miller?" I think we just kind of answered that already. It's not the fact that we would be against JT, just a matter of what you would have to give up to get for him is the biggest issue as to why we are probably more so against than we are for. Really don't think
if this was 2023 or 2024 where we had made the playoffs in previous years, I'd probably be more inclined to make this trade.
Yeah. It's different circumstances right now. And that's why at the right price, awesome. But he's one of, if not the hottest commodity at the deadline, which means the only way you're going to land him.
You can get him for a conditional first and a prospect, or a conditional first, Hedel and I don't know, Kravtsov. You know, players that you want to move on from anyway. I'm all for it, but that's not going to happen.
Yeah, no, that seems way too low for him. And again, there's no guarantee he's even going to be dealt. There's been a lack of willingness from what I've seen in recent reports that the Canucks would part with him. So we'll see. Let's say Jack asks, who's our least favorite Ranger?
All time or current?
I think he's mean all time. I mean, pardon me, current. So for me, there's a couple. Obviously, I think we kind of touched on it. It's nothing personal, but for me personally, I would probably say that my least favorite Ranger, oof, I really think it has to be. I think it has to be Nemeth, just because of how tired I am of seeing Nemeth types in the Rangers defense. That's why. Dryden Hunt, while I don't like him, like I don't believe he is deserving to be in the lineup, he's not as much of a detriment to this team as Nemeth has in numerous occasions on that bottom pair, in my opinion.
Yeah, yeah. My problem with Dryden Hunt is that he's played in the top six.
Yeah. If
Dryden
he was on
Hunt,
the fourth line, it's a different discussion.
exactly. Patrick Nemeth is struggling on the third pair. That's a whole different situation.
Yeah.
And nothing personal against Nemeth, but Nemeth is not an NHL player this season. He's not an NHL caliber defenseman, and yet he's being trotted out there as if he is.
I know. And
and that's part of the issue here. You know, we can all see that Zach Jones is better than Patrick Nemeth, and Zach Jones has one puck deflect off his skate to go into our own net, and he's back in the press box. It's so frustrating. But Nemeth gets to push upon, and this is, see, his lack of defense is one issue, but what really frustrates me is that he continues to push opponents into his own freaking goalie. We are already struggling to keep Shesterkin healthy as it is. I don't need one of our defensemen to assassinate him on a nightly basis. And he's just overwhelmed out there. Mark Stahl was less of a detriment in his final year as a Ranger than Patrick Nemeth is right now.
And that's saying a lot.
Yeah, that is saying a lot, yes.
Because Stahl, we all love Stahl. We all love Girardi when they were in their primes. But when it got to that latter half, they were far more negative than they were positive, to put it lightly. But okay, let's get into another comment here from Michael. Says, Wardy, after the trade deadline, can you guys do a review on Drury so far? Also, how have you been feeling about Gallant and his methods, play style? Yeah, we'll definitely. I think we might not make a full video on it, but like we'll break it down. You know how we feel he's done over a year plus.
I like that idea, because then we have 2 points of reference to go over. We have the off season with free agency, and we have the deadline. Yeah.
The deadline's going to dictate a lot. If this is Chris Drury talking, or if this is a type of Glenn Sather influence, that should not be the case. It's really not going to be that hard to figure out what exactly his vision is after the deadline. But to answer also, how have I been feeling about Galant's methods? I've been enjoying a lot about Gallant. I got to be honest with you. And I think what's so important about someone like him as a coach is that, yes, is he a veteran coach? Yes, he's been to multiple places and he has not won a championship. He got really close, of course, with Vegas, but he struggled. But something that I've noticed with Gallant is that even for his age, he has a certain level of willingness to adapt throughout a season, which I feel that is very difficult to find with coaches of his style usually. Is he perfect by any stretch? No. But I've seen a willingness from him that's greater than I've seen from previous coaches and fellow coaches across the league. And I think that's really important. So I think Gallant is really strong for what the Rangers have right now. He's getting the best out of a lot of these players and is going to help the development, hopefully, Lafreniere, as long as he stays getting good playing time, same thing with Kakko, etc. But with Gallant, and the reason why he hasn't had, crazy success outside of just being, more in the win column than the loss column, coaching-wise, is coaches like him have a shelf life. And I understand that every coach has a shelf life, but so does Gerard Gallant. He's someone where over these next couple of years, it's going to be unbelievably crucial to see what are the development of these young kids. Because I understand it's not all on him, but especially if you take away opportunities to develop when these are guys that should be part of your core going forward, that's going to be vital, in my opinion, on the success of the Rangers one way or the other. So Gallant, I'm really enjoying his style. I like the fact that he has that willingness to adapt instead of just being completely stubborn. Especially for his age, huge hats off to him, because that's not something that I think you see a lot with coaches that are similar types. But he does have a shelf life. So I'm enjoying Gallant a lot now. Same way I enjoyed Alain Vigneault a hell of a lot in his first year with the New York Rangers. it doesn't take too long to go down a slippery slope and realize that a guy maybe hit his peak early coaching wise with a team or just doesn't know how to simply adjust. Gallant will have a shelf life, but that adjustment factor may very well be something that keeps him with the Rangers longer than guys that have similar styles to him.
Yeah. What I like about Gallant is how comfortable the players are playing under him. Compared to the last couple of years under Quinn, it's night and day. And when Chris Knobloch was behind the bench last season, when Quinn was out with COVID, that was probably the nail in the coffin for Quinn, because you could tell that the players were playing without any fear. You know, there was no pressure. They weren't looking over their shoulder to see if they were doing the right thing. They were just out there playing hockey. And the same thing is happening under Gallant. They aren't afraid to make mistakes, which is great. I don't know how long he's going to stay here. I don't think he's ever coached with the team for more than 3 years. So, yeah, we'll see what happens. But the players just seem like they're more comfortable under him, which is what I wanted to see. He's by no means perfect. I still think there are things about his lineup decisions that frustrate me and other fans too. But it's not as egregious as it was under Quinn.
Yep, well said. Agreed. We'll answer one or two questions here before we get out of here for the upcoming schedule to wrap things up. Let's see. There was one that I saw that I thought was good. Okay, here it is. From Quack says, I want Jesper Fast back. Could we please make that happen? Now, it's interesting talking about Jesper Fast when you think about the Rangers' complete lack of depth on this team, right? That in part started when the Rangers decided not to bring Jesper Fast back. They didn't want to go like a 3-year deal on him, which I believe is what he got with Carolina when he signed there. And Fast is someone where I don't see the Rangers trading for, but could be available if he hits the free agent market after next season. So not something I would see in the near future. I'd be a little surprised if the Rangers rekindled a relationship too, just because they moved on from that era, I think, in certain aspects. But yeah, I mean, look, Jesper Fast is such a good glue player to have. You can throw him anywhere. Just think about how much better the Rangers would be right now if they had Jesper Fast back on that second line, like when Panarin was first with the Rangers versus Dryden Hunt right now. That's a significant difference, because you don't just get someone that is defensively sound. He can provide offensively. Yes, you're not going to get a crazy amount from him, but you don't need that when Artemi Panarin and Ryan Strome are leading the way. So he's a perfect complement. He always was. The Rangers have definitely been struggling on that right wing depth after losing him, because unfortunately things didn't go right, especially with Krasov among others. But yeah, maybe after next season, if he becomes available free agent wise, I don't see Carolina trading him though. You can tell that he's been a strong fit for them, and why would he want to leave either? Even if they ask him, we'll
he's
do
the best
a
team in the league. He's chasing that ring this season.
Yeah. Not a guy I see leaving Carolina just yet. Yeah, that's for sure.
Look, I love Jesper Fast. I think he's one of the most likable players this team has had in a long time. But I think for the Rangers, it's their goal should be to find the next Jesper Fast, not to go after the current one.
Yeah, no, I agree, and that's something that the Rangers should be able to develop. You develop one before. Depth players are not necessarily fairly easy to develop, but that's something that isn't outlandish whatsoever, especially if you have a guy that maybe is of a similar profile. But with that being said, let's shift now into the upcoming schedule for the Rangers before we get out of here, because the Rangers' upcoming schedule is interesting. They have some tough games. They have some games that shouldn't be tough on paper, but as you said, the Devils, they've been playing well lately. So next 3 games for the Rangers starts tomorrow at the time of recording this, Wednesday night, against the St. Louis Blues. That is Pavel Buchnevich's return against the New York Rangers. He's destined to at least get 1 goal. So if you guys are into betting, I would definitely go for that one, at least 1 goal. I would even maybe go the over. And then you also have on Friday, it will be against the Devils. Again, they've been playing strong hockey lately. And then the Winnipeg Jets in Winnipeg before we will be back here recording at the earliest Monday, the 7th. So I'm assuming we won't talk again until Monday. There's a decent chance we may not talk again until Wednesday after that Wild game. So could go either way. Steven, what do you think should we predict for the next 3 games or next 4 games? What are you thinking?
Well, it's going to be interesting because I'm flying to New York on Saturday.
Oh, true. Yeah, that's a good point.
I don't know. I don't know what my chances are to record next week because I'm flying to Minnesota on Monday and then fly through to St. Louis on Wednesday. On Friday, I drive to Chicago, and then on Saturday, fly back to New York. So I'll only be back probably next week, Sunday, with a
Okay.
decent opportunity to record. So
Let's see, 4 or 5. Should we just predict until, I guess, the 14th at least?
for the Dallas game. So we have 6 games. Okay.
No, for
Do
the
you
Anaheim
want to
game.
do you want to do 2 separate? So we have 3 and 3, 2 separate predictions. Or do you want to make it one big one for all 6 games?
Well, if we don't do an episode until the at least
Mm,
the game against Anaheim on the 15th, you might as well
yeah.
just do it all in one, right?
Yeah.
Okay,
Okay.
let's do that. You're the champ, so think heavily about this. This is 6 games, Steven.
I
6.
know.
That's a lot.
I'm gonna go. Let's see. 1, 2, 3. I'm gonna go 3, 1, and 2. Oh, sorry, 3, 2, and 1.
All right, yeah, make sure you have that written down.
Yeah.
Okay. 3, 2, and 1. I'm going to go. Whew, this is gonna be tough. I'm going to go over these next 6. 3. Ooh. 3, 1, and 2.
Oh, okay. Now, the goals prediction. Do I go first because I have the belt, or do you go first because I
Yeah,
have
yeah.
the
I
belt?
would say you go first.
Okay, because that makes it easier for you.
It,
Okay.
yeah.
I see what
No,
you're
no,
doing
it doesn't make it easier for me. It makes it easier for you.
here. Not really.
Well, because you
Anyway,
got first pick. So, like, if you're set in stone on something, you get it first. Is my point.
let's see. 6 games. I'm gonna have to pick up the scoring eventually, right? 6 games. I'm gonna go with 20.
Okay. I'm gonna go with. Gonna stay a little conservative. I'm gonna go with 19.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's hope there's like one blowout game where they score like 7. That would only make me
I hope
parties.
so. I make again. If you win, I'm not complaining.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's not a big deal. But I do want to address 2 donations here in the live stream before we wrap things up. Quack, thank you so much for the $10 donation. Really appreciate your support. And Michael, thank you so much for the $5 donation. Says enjoy the road trip, Steve. Stay safe travels. So
Yeah.
shout
I
out
will
Michael.
also be attending the Ducks game at Madison Square Garden. So if anyone's going to the game and you notice a weird jersey, yeah, just come up to me and say hi.
Perfect. Awesome. All right. Well, thank you guys all so much for listening, watching wherever you get your
Whoa,
podcast.
whoa. Don't forget.
I know.
Okay.
This is Rangers Review episode 49, which means that when we look at the Rangers jersey history of the number, the only player that crosses my mind is Laurie Payunemi, but that isn't even an official one.
Nope, because he hasn't played a game yet. But he does have 49 assigned to him this season. So if he does play this season, he will be the 4th Ranger to ever wear number 49. The 3 prior to him, Ilkka Heikkinen, Dan Fritsch or Fritchie. I don't know how was it? Is it Fritchie or Fritsch? I don't know.
I don't know.
That was like 2008, 2009. I was living in South Africa back then, so I missed that entire season. And the first player to ever wear number 49 for the New York Rangers in the 2007-2008 season, he played a total of 6 games, was a -2, and only played 4 games elsewhere in the NHL, Greg Moore.
No clue.
Nope.
No clue.
Greg Moore is one of those names where you're like, that could be anyone. It's such a random name. You know, it's like such a common name.
Yeah, it's a very normal
Yeah,
name.
yeah.
That's it.
Greg Moore. It's like Michael Thomas. Or when the Dallas Stars drafted Thomas Harley, and the
Thomas
GM
Harley.
called it Harley Thomas.
Yeah, that's good.
That's and I still have to think. You know, when I still have to think which is the right one. I'm going to check it now because otherwise I make a fool of myself.
Okay.
Yeah, so his name is Thomas Harley, and the general manager announced the draft pick as Harley Thomas.
That's funny. That's a funny laugh to cap things off here. So
Yeah.
love that. And again,
Before we forget,
Steven!
Happy birthday to Tarmo Reunanen.
Oh, happy birthday, Tarmo. It makes sense why you have his jersey behind you right now. If you're watching
And
on YouTube,
tomorrow,
maybe
happy birthday to the King.
oh, there you go. Okay. Couple awesome Ranger birthdays. Love to see that. So again, happy birthday to Tarmo. Happy birthday to the King. As always, tomorrow I'll probably tweet something out about it. But yeah, that's going to do things for Rangers Review episode 49. Thank you guys so much again for listening. We'll be back hopefully within the next, week and a half, 2 weeks, because Steven's going to be going on his trip to the States and he'll be at a Ranger game against Anaheim Ducks. So hopefully we'll get a recording in before that. Thank you guys so much again. Hope you all have a safe and fine rest of your next week or so, and we'll talk to you soon. Let's go Rangers.
Let's go Rangers.